Let's get to our top story. The National Guard is now in Washington, D.C. Some troops were deployed to the city yesterday, more than 24 hours after President Trump announced he is taking over the Metropolitan Police Department and putting Attorney General Pam Bondi in charge. In total, the Army has mobilized 800 guardsmen to assist law enforcement with things like security, crowd management, and perimeter control. They will not make any arrests. The troops were told they would be there until September 25th, but the president has said the deployment will end once, quote, conditions of law and order are reached. The city's Democratic mayor, Muriel Bowser, met with Bondi yesterday to discuss how to make the most of the federal support. Bondi called the meeting productive, while Bowser offered her strongest rebuke yet during a virtual town hall event last night, calling the president's actions authoritarian.
My jobs are many right now, and part of it is just practically managing us through this crisis. But I'm also really ticked off about the intrusion on the district's autonomy and the characterization of the good work that we do in this city to make it beautiful, to have excellent services, to attract millions of tourists, to have a growing school system, to have a growing city with new residents showing up every day. So that's the real Washington, and I'm counting on you to make sure the world knows that as well.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration is expanding on the president's push to remove homeless people from the nation's capital. At yesterday's briefing, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said current D.C. law allows local police to dismantle encampments. She laid out two options for homeless people: either cooperate with the administration or face potential jail time.
Homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time.
The president posting his intention to clear the homeless from Washington earlier this week on social media, writing, "The homeless have to move out immediately. We will give you places to stay, but far from the Capitol." Homelessness in the United States is at record numbers, according to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. More than 5,000 homeless people currently live in Washington, mostly in emergency shelters. Data shows around 800 people live unsheltered on the streets. So, Jonathan Lemire, let's start with you here. Obviously, the president is leaning in hard on this idea, on this policy of deploying National Guard troops. We can take the homelessness issue separately, to have them in the streets. Again, as Mika pointed out, unclear exactly what their role was, just as it was when they were sent to L.A. earlier in the summer.
Yeah, so far it seems like they haven't done a whole lot. Reports throughout Washington, we are seeing federal law enforcement there. We are seeing National Guard troops for the most part, just sort of standing around protecting, ostensibly protecting things. And it's become a real flashpoint. There are concerns. Is the president using this as a first step? Will he perhaps keep these troops in place longer than he says now? Will he make an effort to put them in other cities, blue cities that he's identified, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, the like? These are useful political foils for him. He and his team like these images of a law and order president, put that in quotes, trying to show they're safe, standing up to crime and making it safer for residents, but also, as President Trump has said, potential visitors to the nation's capital. And certainly some in Washington welcome the help. Others are really leery about it. And there hasn't been done much in coordination with the city government, as we just heard the mayor there. There's been a lot of outcry about Republican budget cuts that could have helped Washington, D.C., $1 billion or more, that could have been more useful, perhaps, than these troops. Elizabeth Bumiller, let's go to you here and just give us your sense of, what this could mean for the administration. Are they feeling this out? Is this sort of a testing ground where they feel like, look, maybe this works in Washington. We could try it elsewhere in other cities too?
Well, I think right now a lot of this is theatrics. A lot of this is just, we've known for decades that Republicans like to run on tough on crime issues. There's midterms coming up in a little more than a year. It's also a very good distraction from Jeffrey Epstein, as we've all pointed out. I mean, right now, I think a lot of this is just It's very good television for the president. And his description of Washington as this, as one of my colleagues at the Times called it, this sort of, this Mad Max hellscape with marauding gangs and violence everywhere, is just completely out of proportion with the reality. Yes, there's crime here, but it's down. And I think right now, last night we saw these troops on the mall around the monuments. There was nothing for them to do. They were taking pictures of themselves with visitors and with tourists. They hung around for about 2 hours and then they went back. It's very, very striking. And right now, again, they're not supposed to be arresting anyone. And it's unclear exactly, as you said, what they're going to do. They're going to Kash Patel said yesterday that they had assisted in 23 arrests. It was a big deal, but there's an average of 68 arrests every day in Washington. So it's not clear yet how much they're going to make a difference. However, just to finish this up, I think that the president is looking at, as he said, Baltimore, Chicago, New York. Now, those are going to be very different cities. Right now, he does have authority in Washington, but he does not have authority, at least under these conditions, in the other cities. And it's going to be a much bigger fight in those cities if he does it.
It's probably important to look at the politics of this. There are some who are saying that this is a big effort to distract the base from other issues, including Jeffrey Epstein. And Willie and Jonathan Lemire, the other part of this in terms of politics is, I think it's a political loser to say that Washington doesn't have its problems. The numbers may be going down in some ways, but Washington, just like a lot of other major cities, has an issue with homelessness. It has an issue with people who are addicted to drugs, who are in the streets. And there have in the past been court rulings that really tied city officials' hands in its ability to respond to the problem in an effective way. And that's where the National Guard and the president may have more sway, more power to do things about it than the city actually did. Having said that, there are many who are concerned about exactly how the president will and the attorney general will use their power to address issues like homelessness and where they will put people, and using the knowledge we have so far of how this administration has treated migrants. I'm sure there's many concerns among Democrats especially about how people will be treated when they are taken off the street. We'll see what happens. We will definitely see what happens, and we won't jump ahead of that. But I think this is a political win for the president. Anybody who takes a look at what is happening in Washington, even the mayor herself will say, they cannot do certain things to take people off the street because of court rulings. And there are people on the street, often near monuments and coffee shops and near Capitol Hill. You can walk out there on a weekend morning and you will find that happening. So I think one of the things that is a real struggle here politically is how Democrats deal with the reality in Washington versus clearly the triggering attempt that the president is having on this situation that is politically a winner for him, Willie, but not necessarily what might solve the problem truly when we're dealing with people who are struggling and who are out there and who become dangerous in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, like any American city, there's crime, there's a problem of homelessness. Yep. We just read some of those stats. D.C. is unique in that it's our nation's capital. Anthony, it may be a short-term political winner. We'll see if he likes how this goes, if he does decide to expand this concept to Chicago and to L.A. and to other cities. He's threatened to use it. We'll see if it's a political winner in the long term. But it is true that there's a perception and a feeling among some people who live in Washington that the crime is worse. Data tells us otherwise. So it's walking that line of addressing the statistics and not, as we said yesterday, making policy based on anecdote because you heard a story about something happening.
Right. There is a gap between what the data shows and how many Washingtonians feel. And I live in Washington. This is personal for me. Many people are frustrated with crime that we see, particularly committed by juveniles in the city of Washington. People are frustrated, Willie, that when they go to CVS to buy deodorant, that they have to get it from behind locked plexiglass, right? But the response here, and let me say this, right? These are not just random anecdotes. What we see in Washington Post polling, among others, is that roughly half of DC residents, mostly half of DC residents, view this as a serious problem or an extremely serious problem. And the question then becomes why, right? What I talked about with Katie K a little earlier, and way too early, is that juvenile arrests are down in the District of Columbia. But we don't see that in Baltimore, where year over year juvenile arrests are up. And so what are the reasons for that? Jonathan Lemire rightly pointed out the $1 billion that Congress is withholding, which would allow Washington, D.C. to hire more officers. But the D.C. Council has a role to play here as well, because some of the laws that they have passed are not as strong as they could be for juvenile offenders and for reoffenders. Now, having said all of that, I want to be clear that does not justify the disproportionate response that we are seeing from Donald Trump. It is a political stunt. He is exploiting people's fears. But to be frank, Democrats on the D.C. Council have created this political opening that allows him to do that. Now, I'm not naive, Willie. I suspect that even if juvenile crime wasn't a problem, Donald Trump would have taken the actions that we have seen in recent days. But from a raw political perspective, you never want to give your political opponent an opening to address the needs that many of your constituents have. And that's what we're seeing playing out right now.